So today's video topic was actually put forth by one of you guys, the Generalist 19. This was really fun to figure out. So let's jump straight into it. The economic branches of the German focus tree. So first of all, you should only do the 4-year plan if you're good at the game. And there's a rather simple reason for that. With the MEFO bills, you can see there it says the consumer goods factories factor, say that 5 times fast, will increase by 3% each month up to 100%. So the game starts out with the factor being 10%. So for every 35 days that passes by, the consumer goods factory factor is going to go from 10 to 13 to 16 and so on and so forth. There is a focus you can do early on, though, institute price controls, and that will mark that number down to just 2.5%. When you're on MEFO bills, then you have a time limit where by a certain point in the game, you have to find ways to reduce the effects of the MEFO bills or your economy just collapses. Prior to going to war, there's things you can do to get this number down. There's things you can do that will actually raise this number. But let's look at the ways you can keep this number down. On your focus tree, you'll go down to Institute Price Controls. This gives you access to decisions you can take to reduce the effects of MEFO bills. So for example, the game starts at 10%. If we take all these decisions, that actually gets your MEFO bills factor down to -20. But again, these are decisions you can only take once, so they're a very temporary measure to delay the inevitable. And the inevitable is going to war and making conquest. When you choose this side of the tree, your goal is to get to autarky achieved as quick as possible. And as you can see, there's a pretty high bar to clear. You're going to have to conquer quite a few countries to get access to this many resources. But to keep it simple, basically, you just need to play a historical game and then capitulate the Soviet Union at a reasonable time. Now, here's an Excel sheet I've made to kind of help explain the timeline. There's a link to download this Excel spreadsheet in the description of this video. What I've gone ahead here is created a timeline. So you can see every 35 days, something about it changes. Now, the way I've ordered this Excel sheet is basically assuming that you're rushing down all the economic focuses as soon as you can take them. Granted, I don't play that way and you don't play that way, but just to make this Excel sheet clean and simple, that's what I've gone ahead and done. This is as far through the economic tree you can get without going to war. The rest of these focuses require you being at war with a major or controlling a substantial amount of non-core territory. So for this Excel sheet, I have it paced out every 35 days. Then I have the other focuses based on when you would go to war on a historical game. And there you can see the other focuses you can unlock from there. So here's the base consumer goods factory factor. And then you can see I have an adjusted column here. The adjusted one is based off the individual actions you can take to lower the impact of MEFO bills and the German advisor for those MEFO bills, Helmar Schacht. Note, this guy disappears as soon as you go to war, because once you go to war, it goes from MEFO bills to economy of conquest, which is essentially the same thing. So you can see after you do institute price controls, I just factor in all the decisions you can make to lower the impact of MEFO bills. And as you can see, this number slowly rises up. Once you've taken those initial price control decisions, there's nothing you can really do to stop this number from rising. The only way you can get it down is by going to war. So if you're playing a historical game as Germany with the MEFO bills on, you really can't afford to wait too much longer after the historical date to go to war, because the MEFO bills will eventually crash your economy. In my review of the German focus tree, this was one thing I pointed to as something I loved about it. I love when the game gives explanatory power to historical events. Hitler's military advisors didn't believe Germany would be ready for World War II until the fall of 1940. But because of the economic pressure of the MEFO bill system, they ended up going to war in 1939 ahead of schedule. I love that the MEFO bill dynamics in the game helps give the player understanding of why events happened when they did. As an aside, I just loaded into a 1939 start date, and I noticed something that Paradox fixed with the latest update. Danziger War is already completed. Prior to the update, you would have a war goal on Poland, but you had not completed Danziger War. So you could go to war in 39, but you wouldn't get cores on any of Danzig. So when World War II starts, you switch over to economy of conquest. Then once a nation is capitulated, then you have access to decisions to seize their gold reserves. For nations you capitulate as Germany, this is how they reduce your consumer goods factory factor. Now in testing this, these numbers tend to vary. So I don't know if they're based off how many civilian factories are owned at the time of capitulation or what. But when I was building this spreadsheet, this is what it gave me. So going back to our timeline here, you can see by World War II has started, let's say you use the decision to seize Polish gold around 1,470 days in. That's probably a little late, but you can see how it brings down that factor. Also notice, however, that the number now, once you're at war, jumps up not by 2.5%, but by 4.5%. This just accelerates the timeline even further. So you can see that after you've beaten the Poles, the Benelux region, and France and Norway, the nations Germany historically had conquered, you're put on a pretty rapid timeline to wrap up the job. Essentially, you have until about mid-1942 to wrap up the war, or else the MEFO bills are just going to crash your economy. The only way to de-escalate the situation is to complete the focus Autarky achieved. And let me tell you, the prerequisites for that are pretty high. To oversimplify things, you not only have to conquer all of Europe and the Soviet Union actually won't have enough tungsten for you to finish the job. So what you'll find yourself doing is you have to go in here and build infrastructure in Soviet states where they do have tungsten. Then you have to prospect for some more tungsten in the Soviet Union, and then switch your garrison orders to forced labor, because you can see there that does plus 40 on local resources. Then you have to hold that for 70 days, and you finally get rid of economy of conquest, and you get this German term, which I will not even attempt to pronounce. But that begs the question, is autarky worth it? Let's say you're good at the game and you can conquer all the Soviet Union before the end of 1942. Is this focus worth it over going the prioritized economic growth branch? Lucky for you, I have a timeline for that side of the tree as well. Essentially, when you do prioritize economic growth, your economy takes a massive hit in the beginning of the game. And then as you do these focuses, it repairs. So as with the MEFO bills, your consumer goods factory factor slowly escalates throughout the game. With prioritized economic growth, it starts out high and you do focuses to slowly reduce it. But the nice thing about this side of the tree is all of these focuses are only about 35 days. So yeah, you're at a 60% factory factor right off the bat compared to MEFO bills only having 6. But in less than a year, you're all the way down to 10%, which is more than manageable. Here in this third tab of this document, I have it broken down by specific dates that are relevant to gameplay. So this first one is after all the initial focuses are completed. So that's all the economic branches you can do without needing 1939 tech if you're going to rebuild the economy, or being at war if you're going to the MEFO bill side. After that first year, your consumer goods factory factor is about the same because you're able to gimmick the system with MEFO bills. But MEFO bills has such a huge buff to building war industry. Other than that, they're right about the same. Doing the economic recovery path is going to give you more civilian industry and stability initially, whereas going MEFO gives you more military industry and research bonuses. For me, looking at this and the way I play the game, it's kind of a wash. I think MEFO's better overall, but it's not better in the things that I'm doing in the first year of the game. All the bonuses I get are things that I wouldn't be doing early game anyways. Now, the clear advantage of going prioritized economic growth is the stability and ruling party popularity. But to be honest, when you play a Germany game, if you play it right, you have plenty of political power. So whatever stab hits you get, or whatever party popularity problems you have, can easily be fixed with just some political power decisions. Okay, let's look just before World War II kicks off. This is where MEFO bills become economy of conquest. And you can see that consumer goods factory factor is getting to be a problem. Otherwise, these sides of the tree are exactly the same. Okay, you've beaten Poland, you've conquered the Benelux region and France, and you've gone ahead and taken out Norway as well. Well, you can see across the board, MEFO bills are stronger. This production efficiency and war industry output is just too good. Between 1940 and 1941, the MEFO side of the tree is clearly the victor. Now by 1941, when you're about to invade the Soviet Union, again, that consumer goods factory factor is rising up and becoming problematic. But if you've done the recovering economy side of the tree, those focuses have really caught up with the economy of conquest. And since this side of the tree isn't locked behind you having to control so many resources, you can basically complete this tree far earlier than you could this side. So by mid-1941, I think economic recovery is the better side. Okay, let's say you've done it. It's late 1942. You've conquered all the Soviet Union. This table assumes that all the focuses relative to the economy have been completed. how do they stack up? As you can see, they're both pretty stinking good. Okay, so the question remains, which side is better? And to that, my answer would be not which side is better, but when is the side better? Early to mid game, 4-year plan is going to be the way to go. Mid game to late game, prioritize economic growth is better. End game, they're both about even. Which one do I prefer? If I'm playing a historical Germany game, I'm going to go 4-year plan. For a historical Germany game, it's all about being first and being fast. That's the gamble. And if you're good at it, it's absolutely worth it. If you play a historical Germany game, if you believe you can beat the Soviets by mid-1942, then go MEFO bills every time. If you're not confident you can reach that bar, or if you need more time to get yourself ready for war, go ahead and do prioritize economic growth. When you go this side of the tree, there's no rush to going to war. If you need to wait until the fall of 1940, like the German generals originally wanted to, then go ahead and do this side. This side is also the side you really have to take if you do any alt history pass. Because when you do alt history, you postpone the start of World War II. Basically, pick the side of the economic tree that's most conducive to the way you play the game.